But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Coming to you, live from, right?
A marshy, duck-filled wetland?
Deep within, okay.
It's worse than listening to Trudeau.
Duck rape, feminism, patriarchy.
Every time I say I'm
Brown Miller.
Okay. Okay. All right. Coming to you live from deep within a windy and muddy and marshy and also sometimes sunny radioactive meme land. We are the survivors of the alt-right apocalypse, the few, the brave, the bitchy, once more wading into battle against the lobster hordes with Rantzerker 109. How duck rape, woohoo, creates feminist insanity.
You know, duck rape actually creates interesting duck penises. I wasn't really aware that feminist insanity was also a byproduct of duck rape.
It is now.
All right. Well,
here's what I'm hoping to learn from this. What does the duck penis do to the duck vagina?
Well, it's like a corkscrew, so I'm guessing that
it's not quite like the cat penis.
Open a bottle of wine or something.
I have been informed that the cat penis does not destroy the cat vagina. It just simulates ovulation via the spines.
Stimulates ovulation. Yeah,
stimulates ovulation.
Ripping it. By ripping it. It has barbs. It has barbs that
I'd have to look that up.
Yeah, barbs. Barbs, Alison, like razor wire.
Ouch.
What does that say about us humans? Like
we're actually pretty nice. So,
yeah.
But my sex at dawn, though.
Many mammalian species have developed curtainized penile spines along the glands or shaft, which may be involved in sexual selection. These spines have been described as simple, single-pointed structures or complex with 2 or 3 points per spine. Penile spine morphology can be related to mating system.
You know what's hilarious is like dogs, right? You know how when people like spot some dogs mating, right? And they say, "Oh, throw a bucket of water on them," right? But that actually can really damage the vagina of the female dog, because when the male dog inserts his penis into her vagina muscles clamp down really hard on the shaft, and his glands swells up really, really big. So it's really hard to get them unattached without actually hurting the female.
Yeah, that copulatory tie is intended to keep mated pairs of wolves together and affectionate for a couple, like half an hour. So it helps to secure the reproductive, the pair bond between wolves.
Well, and they say that when you're actually breeding your animal, sometimes the owners of the animals will, if the male dog is kind of heavy, right, will actually take the male dog off and kind of turn him around so that they're ass to ass, kind of. So they're just standing there butt to butt, tied together.
Shut it down.
And this is more than you ever wanted to know. And you know what's interesting about all these different type of animal penises? They don't say dick about us and our mating behavior.
Was that a pun?
Yeah. That was.
I refuse to say. I refuse. I take the fifth.
All right, Hannah.
Yeah.
Let's carry on.
All right. So
let's get this freak show on the road.
Are we gamifying this stream? Is there anything that people should know that are watching?
I don't think so.
All right. It's not. It's
you should just know that I'm really cranky.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I could do a bit of a show. Our after show, we're going to be doing more Big Think, specifically Big Think's video on. Let me go through my Rolodex.
It's on
Why
Friends, right?
why harassment claim on Friends was dismissed from court. That sounds like a really fun topic. That sounds really great. And if you would like to join us discussing that topic, you can become a patron at www.patreon.com, or you can support us monthly through feedthebadger.com. It'll be a little bit more circuitous to get to the after show today on Feed the Badger, but you will pick up other after shows in the future. So if you would like to support our content and also join us in the after show, once again, www.patreon.com or feedthebadger.com. That's about it. Let's just are we ready?
Yeah,
Right?
I'm ready. Well, all right. Big Think should change their channel name to that feel when too intelligent. I think that's actually more appropriate. But let us go into this video.
According to aesthetic evolution, animals are agents in their own evolution. That is, through their choices, they end up shaping their own species. One of the implications of this idea is a new perspective on what happens when mate choice is infringed or violated.
Pausing for the banana, but also to explain something, you might notice this guy is blue. It's because we are trying to protect the copyright. Yeah,
it's because he's actually he's being videoed from his spaceship in orbit over the Earth, where he's hanging out with George Soros and Alex Jones.
Yeah.
Okay, just so you know, aesthetic theory of sexual selection was proposed by Darwin. And
yeah, it's got to do with like things like peacock's tails and mandrill's colors and stuff like that, where females will often just kind of like females of a certain species, like maybe the bowerbird, right? They just really like the color blue, and so male bowerbirds collect blue things, and then they spread them all out, and they make a bower, they make a house, and then they have shiny blue things all around it, and so it basically one sex has a preference for a certain aesthetic, and then the other the opposite sex member who complies the best with that preference is the one chosen. And then it shapes things like peacock's tails and mandrill's colors and things like that, and the monkeys blue, baboons blue behinds and things like that. So
yeah, so in describing aesthetic evolution in the way that this reptilian does, he is not really doing it accurate, at least not to what Darwin proposed as mate preferences as a taste for the beautiful or aesthetic capacity. He's doing it as if aesthetic evolution is synonymous with females having mate choice. So I guess an aesthetic evolution is the female's mate choice not being interfered with by the coercive or force of a male. It's a little bit garbled, like most of what he has to say.
Yeah, I think like when it comes right down to it, the aesthetics are shaped by the mate choices of both males and females, right? But I would guess that female sexual selection probably has a lot more to do with it in a lot of different species, right? It really does seem to be that the males of a lot of sort of monogamous bird species are much more colorful than the females and all of that. And those aesthetics make them easier targets for predators. The really, really, really elaborate tails or whatever of the peacock makes them more vulnerable to predators, but it actually makes it more likely that they will pass on their genes before getting eaten.
So you have these two explanations. One is that the peahen is attracted to the beautiful display of the male's tail feathers, and the other is that it is a proxy for determining the vitality and the vigor of the male peacock. because
Yeah.
if he's able to create such an elaborate display, he has very good genes.
Yeah.
So
Well,
those are two different ways of explaining it. And I think
could-
what he's trying to get at here with aesthetic evolution is the idea that when the choice is made aesthetically, it's the female choice, and when it's vigor and viability, it's not female choice. Maybe that's what he's trying to present.
Can I also ask, just out of curiosity, because I'm learning about this stuff with you guys or from you guys, could it also be on top of the two reasons for the peacock's tail? Could there also be the idea that despite his big, beautiful, and colorful tail, he has managed to not become the prey of some predator someplace?
Yes.
So surviving
Yes.
despite that is also a sign of, that his genetic
it's a sign of
worthiness.
fitness.
Yeah.
Yeah, sign of fitness, absolutely. Same with mandrills need male mandrills need a ton of testosterone to maintain their facial colors. It's only the dominant males who have really, really strong colors. And it's actually kind of interesting because when you have a situation where a new male will come in and oust a dominant male, and sort of defeat and depose him and take his place as the dominant guy, the newly deposed male will his colors will fade almost overnight. Like they will be noticeably faded by the next morning. So because he has that drop in testosterone that accompanies being defeated, and he can't maintain his colors without that amount of testosterone in his system. So.
All right, so let's get a little bit more in here.
By sexual violence or by coercion in animal species. One prominent example of this from our own research is on duck sex. Ducks are unusual among birds in having both
I'm trying to get to the end of the sentence without having to cut it off in the middle, but he's pretty bad
he's worse.
about that.
He's worse than Trudeau. He's so much worse than Trudeau.
That's why I began it this way. Probably a bad idea, but regardless, this guy cannot complete a sentence without.
He can't even complete a clause of a sentence, or even a couple of words. Yeah.
But he got onto Big Think. He's on Big Think.
Well, he's probably pretty smart. You never know.
He
right?
shares. He's sharing a platform with that Japanese guy and Steven Pinker.
I think if he was smart, he would never be able to make the connections that he makes in here because there is no logical basis for them. He essentially garbles out some nonsense.
I haven't watched
race, feminism, patriarchy.
I
Sorry.
haven't watched the whole video,
Karen.
so
spoilers.
Spoilers. Don't
So
ruin it for me.
I won't ruin it for you.
All right, I'm going back a little bit so we can try to get some context.
Unusual among birds in having both a typical mate choice situation where male and females pair up on the basis of display and preferences, and simultaneously other individuals that force copulations on female ducks as they approach reproduction.
All right, pausing for the banana. Anybody want to say anything to that?
Well, rape isn't really that rare in the animal world. I know there's some species that are more rapey than others, but it's not completely unheard of. So,
Well, but the thing is that he's trying to make the argument later on that rape can apply to animals. I'm not so sure it can. Forcible copulations is a neutral way of looking at it. Rape requires, I think, consciousness.
But with sentience, right?
Sentience. Okay, let's try to complete his thought there, Brian. I know it's going to be jumping back and forth.
So what that means is that as the eggs are being laid, females have to defend themselves from forced copulations by males. Now, forced copulation is the word that biologists use now, but for over a century, biologists used the word rape in biology. Now, that was abandoned back in the 1970s in response to the feminist movement and Susan Brown-Miller and her work against our will, proposing and articulating a specifically social context for rape in humans.
Yeah, she was like, this rape is the instrument, like the tool by which all men keep all women in a state of fear, and it is nothing more or less than a concerted campaign of terrorism against women to keep them subordinated. That was her thesis. That was her uniquely human social context for rape. Is that it's not the work of a certain number of pathological individuals. It is not the actions of people, normal people within pathologizing situations such as wartime and things like that. But it was just what men do to keep women down. And there you go.
Yeah, this is so in response to feminists, biologists dropped the idea of animals being raped because they were trying to look at the sociological construct, and now we're back here trying to say that animals get raped.
Well, like personally, I don't care either way. I mean, like animals have society, often have society. Animals often have culture. Culture is just learning that's passed between individuals, right? So, I mean, like the macaque who discovered after she dropped her potato in the water, that the potato tasted a lot better, after most of the dirt, was rinsed off of it, right? She started washing her potatoes, and then she taught other individuals in the group how to wash their potatoes. That's actually culture. It's a rudimentary culture, but it's the passing of knowledge between individuals intentionally, as opposed to just through observation. So, like it's not like we're supermondo hugely special. But at the same time, like the idea, like Susan Brown-Miller's ideas were completely fucking crazy.
They were useful, I would say. Crazy, but useful.
Well, useful in the political context of getting
Yep.
what feminists wanted done, for sure, but not useful in the sense of helping us understand ourselves.
No, absolutely not useful in that sense. And likewise, this is not particularly useful at all. But it is interesting to note that ducks have evolved a mechanism to avoid forced insemination, essentially. Female ducks have evolved a mechanism to avoid forced insemination. Presumably, that's the allegation here. And yet, humans have not.
But at the same time too, male ducks have evolved physically to enable forced copulation. So female ducks have corkscrew vaginas and male ducks have corkscrew penises, and those the shapes of those genitals co-evolved in sort of a sexual arms race over generations and generations. So, and then you get the same thing with fruit flies and stuff like that, where often the sexual arms race is between males. So you essentially have males who have highly acidic semen that kills and poisonous semen that kills the sperm of other males. So if they mate with a female fruit fly that has already mated with somebody, then their semen goes and it kills the sperm of the other males, and it actually damages the female's body, but she manages to get her eggs laid before she dies from the horrible damage that this does to her body. But if you actually hold back the evolution of the females by a few generations, several generations, because these fruit flies evolve very quickly, you hold them back so that they don't co-evolve a resistance to this poisonous semen, then they don't end up living long enough. If you keep the evolution of the males several generations, just keep breeding them and hold these eggs static or these cocoons of females static, and you introduce them together again, these more evolved males with these less evolved females, the females all die before they can lay the eggs because the semen is too toxic.
Wow.
Yeah,
Animal sex is disturbing.
it really is. Holy shit.
Well, definitely. But what's interesting here is we're now going to get a lecture about how duck sex says something about us. Okay, let's continue.
Okay.
This led to the creation of a euphemism, forced copulation, in biology. Unfortunately,
I don't see
articulating
how that's a
sexual
euphemism. That's not a euphemism. That's a completely descriptive term. Forced copulation. It's a perfectly descriptive term.
Not exactly sure why he's wanting to insist of describing this duck sex, this forced duck sex, in terms of something that we reserve for crime in our own culture. But you're right, it is not a euphemism. It's completely descriptive. It's in fact more descriptive than rape. All right, continue, Brian.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
violence in the animal world with these euphemistic terms has led to scientists losing track of the fact that forced copulation is against the will of the ducks.
It ain't against the will of that male duck, is it? So, but
Well, no, it's not. But that's irrelevant.
I know.
Consent is always irrelevant in these discussions.
Okay, so essentially, yes, it's against the female duck obviously doesn't want it. And the male duck does, the male duck rapist does, but
Duck
like
rapist, I can't believe we're saying that.
to assume that, like this is morally on some, level that is equivalent to, with, rape of human beings is a little bit much. And I think honestly, like forced copulation is actually the better term. It's a much more clinical term. It's a much more descriptive term. It does not deny the fact that the female doesn't want it. It does not erase that fact. It just essentially puts it in a clinical sense, that acknowledges that these animals aren't particularly sentient.
I would have to agree. And furthermore, there's nothing. Biologists are really careful when they choose animal models to draw inferences about human beings. What this guy is doing is completely, it's nonsense. It's garbled nonsense. Like there's not there. You can't just say, Brian, you're echoing. You can't just say that that ducks have rape and human beings have rape, therefore the ducks somehow are a model for us. I mean, first of all, most animals, like Karen said, most animals experience forced copulation. So it's significant in the animal kingdom. But when you're selecting an animal to model some aspect of humanity, that they're much more careful about their selection than this. For example, the ones that I've seen proposed are wolves, of course, chimps because they're genetically close to us, and also prairie voles that pair bond to study the emotional, or the hormonal underpinning of pair bonding. I have never heard ducks proposed as a model for human beings. So we have a biologist saying, yeah, I'm going to use ducks as a model for human beings for no apparent reason.
Yeah,
except
it's
propaganda, basically.
well, I think the only reason he's chosen it is because the female ducks and the male ducks have evolved their anatomy. Female ducks to avoid being, sexually assaulted, and the male ducks to facilitate being able to do that. So it's like an anatomical sort of. Because it involves body parts, right, and specific shapes of body parts that have evolved. It's really sort of, I guess it's a very simple kind of example that would reflect, I guess, evolution selecting for rape avoidance or something.
Yeah, but
like
human beings don't have physical selection for rape avoidance.
I know, and they don't really have physical selection for rape either, because it's actually difficult to maintain an erection reliably within specific highly stressful circumstances, and so I mean, like it's not something that, like, if we had a penis bone, like a lot of other mammals do, which just essentially shoves a bone up through the penis, and the erection is maintained by that rather than vascular tissue.
Congestion.
Then, yeah.
The
But
thing, there's actually a lot more complicated stuff to this, but let's at least get to the point where he makes a point, because he still isn't making a point. Brian.
Taking the aesthetic perspective and trying to understand what it is that individual females, in this case ducks, want, we have arrived at a new perspective on what it means when they don't get what they want, right? So in some ways,
No, not right. Not right. I don't even fucking know what you just meant there. What did he just mean?
female ducks are supposed to get what they want, Alison. Get with the program.
Yeah, but what information has he gotten from understanding what happens when female ducks don't get what they want?
Yeah, actually, what he means is when female ducks get what they don't want.
Okay, so
He's just not very eloquent.
okay, so when
maybe.
we understand now what female ducks get, what female ducks do when they get something they don't want? Is that where we're at here? Is this what we're talking about?
They evolve a corkscrew vagina.
Yeah, but here's the other thing. How do you know that they don't want that? I mean, yes, they're resisting, presumably.
It might be token resistance.
Well, not just might be token resistance, but it
maybe
might
the
also
corkscrew
be
penis is a sign of fitness.
Yeah, exactly. Like maybe the ability to inseminate despite resistance is something that the female ducks are actually selecting for. That's the thing. That's the problem with this aesthetic evolution, or even impugning any kind of intent to female ducks. You can't, because we don't have the ability to talk to them or even infer their mental states, because they are another species.
Quack, quack.
Okay, continue, Brian.
All right.
Using socially sensitive euphemisms has led to imprecision or fuzziness in the science. In the case of duck sex, what we find is that males can force themselves on females because they're among the few birds that still have a penis.
Okay, I sense some ideology sneaking in there. It's
penis done does it to you. It's the penis.
Well, you kind of do need a penis in order to, because it's probably, I mean, think about it this way, right? It's really, really difficult for male hyenas to coerce sex from female hyenas, not because male hyenas don't have a penis, they do, but because female hyenas' vaginas are external, long, floppy, mock penises, right? So they're like these long, floppy, hollow tubes that dangle down, and it's really difficult to insert a penis into that without the female actually really cooperating, right, and helping you out. So essentially, I can get his point that if a male bird doesn't actually have a penis, it would be much more difficult to deliver semen into a female's body when that female doesn't want it.
I actually disagree, because presumably if you don't have a penis, then there's not much of a vagina on the bird, so you can just secrete semen into the I don't know, the fold of the vagina.
You can just jizz on her.
Yeah, and that would be it. I mean, consider how much these ducks have to navigate the maze of the duck vagina. If they just ejaculated it from
in her general direction, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if it
dog, be quiet.
Presumably, once you have just a cloacula and no vagina, then the insemination process is actually simplified. Just the duck would just have to hold her still somehow, and then just rub up against her, and that's it.
Well, how would he hold her still, though?
Well, how does he hold her still in this instance?
Well, he jabs her with his dick, and then the dick holds her still.
I know
No,
actually
be
that if you
quiet.
actually read the mechanics of this, I believe they insert a flaccid, like just a little bit, and then it's sort of like a balloon being inflated inside a corkscrew flask, if you can imagine that.
It's
So
weird. It's not even really a penis because the semen travels
on
on
the
the
outside.
outside of it. So
But he's really excited about this idea.
yeah.
I like his
I don't know. I'm pretty worked up myself right now.
God. All right,
I think
let's
I think I'm gonna go back to writing novels after this.
erotic novels
There you go.
of ravishment by creatures with no penises.
Or
Chuck
with
Tingle.
Or with
corkscrew
pseudo penises.
penises.
Yeah, pseudo penises in the shapes of
Pseudo penis. Yeah, yeah.
All right.
All
And the
right.
thing
Here-
is that
Yeah, go.
do we really want to say that you can't you need a penis to rape? Because that's not true. Certainly not with
No.
humans.
No, well, it's absolutely not true, but
Well, I guess you need a
need
penis
some-
in the other way too.
you do need some kind of mechanism to hold the person or the other party to the rape in
You
one.
have to have something to insert into and something to insert in order to have rape. Okay, fair enough. Continue.
Well, no, not necessarily. I don't know. I think of rape as just sort of a violation of somebody's potential reproductive choice.
All right, Brian. Let's try to get to the point. that
What
he's
we
trying-
find in ducks is as a result of female resistance and male sexual violence, we find a coevolutionary arms race between male capacity to force and female resistance. In this case, it takes place in the form of a genital arms race. The males evolve more elaborate and more elaborately armed penises, and the females evolve convoluted vaginal morphologies that exclude the penis during forced copulation.
For the banana. Do you want me to keep going?
Is there
Well,
another way to explain this? Like, could this be
Okay.
part of the reproductive cycle, as in if the male approaches them during a point where they're not receptive, they don't want to necessarily deposit the sperm?
what I think needs to be done to actually determine whether this is actually a co-evolutionary arms race of genital anatomy would be genetic testing to see whether males who successfully penetrate females during this sort of coercive these coercive things, right, are actually producing offspring.
Yeah, that's one thing. Although he does say later that something like 2% of the offspring are fathered by presumably the duck that she hasn't chosen.
Okay, so it's 2%. It's pretty small.
Yeah, it is pretty small. I'm wondering if
I'm guessing that over the lifetime of a female duck, 2% would be potentially zero offspring.
yeah. Well, but the other thing is that I'm wondering if this is some part of, because it doesn't necessarily have to be a result of rape. Because the thing is that if you think about it, and this is why I hesitate to call this rape, because the difference between a receptive female duck and a non-receptive female duck is basically being drugged by her own hormones. So essentially, a receptive female duck has been rohypnoled. Are you going to say that, like, at either state? Is there really consent? Again, there's the echo there, Brian. But is there really consent going on if the only difference is that the female duck is being compelled by hormonal compulsion, like essentially has no choice because her hormones are telling her to. And in addition, it's the same thing happening with the male ducks.
Mhm.
So it just doesn't seem, it seems ridiculous to start talking about rape in this context. And the other thing I wanted to say is, okay, so you have a situation where the female duck is not receptive and she's being mounted by male ducks. Is the issue that she's trying not to be raped by the males, or is the issue that this is just a process and they're trying to prevent I don't know, copulation before she's ready for it? so that he doesn't necessarily waste his sperm or something. I don't know. Like it just seems to be a little bit too pat what they're saying. Do you
It's
understand what I mean?
I haven't paid enough attention to ducks to really have a good sense of whether it's one or the other. But
Because if these male ducks are raping her prior to her being receptive, she's not going to have. She's not going to be reproduced with them anyway.
yeah.
Because she isn't ovulating.
Well, and when you look at the number of eggs she might lay in her lifetime, it's probably a lot less than 100, if she's actually raising a brood, right? Raising ducklings. So maybe 8 or 10 per year, right? And lives how long? So 2% could very well be. For one duck, it'll be one duckling, and for the next duck, it'll be 0.
Yeah, but the other thing is, did they control that these are different ducks?
Yeah.
Because this could be a situation where these are unsuccessful, and they're putting a hell of a lot of inference into the male ducks. Maybe the male ducks just don't realize that she's completely receptive, or she's not receptive yet. And they're being compelled hormonally to mate. So we got all these rohypnol ducks doing crazy shit. The males are being compelled hormonally to mate with the females. It's not working out. It could be the same duck that ends up fathering her children when she's receptive. And what's happening, is it necessarily...
Duck aphrodisiacs, not even once.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just full of crap, but it just,
I don't
it
know.
seems
I
like
don't
there
know
must
enough.
be something. There could be something that isn't being accounted for here.
Well, because if okay, here's the thing, right? In order for something to become an adaptation, right, that is common throughout the entire population, one would expect that it would have to be more successful than just showing up in 2% of the offspring, right? We have issues with trying to figure out whether male homosexuality is an adaptation or whether it's a spandrel, right? Whether it's tied to some kind of it's a sequence of genes on the X chromosome that really works well for women, right? In terms of their fitness, and therefore it stays there to facilitate their fitness, and turns 3% of the male population, makes them prone to homosexuality. Okay, because that is extremely damaging to their reproductive fitness. So essentially we have that's 3% of males. So 1.5% of the population is affected by something that that it's not an adaptation. Male homosexuality is not present in 100% of the male population the way these penises are. So if these penises only help produce 2% of the offspring, how did they spread throughout the entire population?
And also, why would this adaptation, which makes presumably normal sex more difficult and fertilization more onerous with a partner that the duck has quote unquote chosen, why would it have persisted? Just doesn't, I don't know. It seems a little bit odd. Are there other pseudopenis birds that we can compare to? Maybe this is a function of the actual mechanics of the pseudopenis.
No idea.
Okay, let's continue then.
I think there are a few, but far between. So, yeah.
So
Okay, Brian, let's go.
among the many weird things that of duck penises is that they're counterclockwise coiled. Well, the female vagina in ducks that have high rates of resistance actually coils in the opposite direction. So they have literally evolved an anti-screw device in their vaginal tract that obstructs the intromission of the penis during forced copulation.
Pausing for the banana. I don't want to go too far.
I could see the females possibly adapting in that way. Right? Mm-hmm. I could see for those reasons, right? I could, but I still don't understand why there's a corkscrew freaking penis. If it's not very successful, in terms of like, so it's very strange. I don't know.
Xavier Gallagher has been yelling at us in the chat, and he said that I just want to get his comment. It's not a super chat, but I thought I'd read it out anyway. He says, "For fuck's sake, people, you are really showing up bioignorance. And then I asked him, if he could explain, and he writes, biological principle of parsimony on the subject of rape and homosex, treating animals as automatons and machine-like when we know, because he put 2 O's, they have rich emotional lives and make decisions." I just wanted to read his comment.
They cannot communicate those rich emotional lives to us. And certainly not in terms that are relevant to a criminal definitions or crime definitions.
Yeah, and I would argue that even humans mostly don't make decisions consciously, for the most part. So mostly what we use our big, gorgeous forebrains for is to back rationalize decisions that we make through intuition, right? That we make the decisions that we make for the most part through subconscious intuitions, largely involving our hormones and our evolved psychology. And then we use our rational brain to back rationalize why we did it, often getting it wrong. So the idea that animals have huge amounts of sentience and stuff like that is kind of ridiculous to me.
And it's also, we have to guess what they're doing. I mean, I can tell Karen how she's feeling. She may tell me the truth, but at the very least, I can communicate with her in regards to aspects of her sentience. It's extremely difficult to do the same, especially consistently in a scientific context with animals.
Particularly with ducks, because ducks don't express emotions the way we express them.
I mean, you can make the argument with cats and dogs, which is why we find them companion animals.
Yeah.
Karen, could you mute when you're crinkling?
No.
What are you crinkling?
Doritos.
Well, mute. Okay, so I mean, maybe our companion animals, but again, it's extremely difficult to make a standardized test. How do you test ducks for consent? Do you give them a survey? And how it isn't necessarily that resistance means lack of consent in a satiant factor. It just means lack of receptivity. And does the fact that a female duck is flooded with hormones that compel consent, does that mean that is consent? And furthermore, is it consent for the male duck when he's flooded with hormones that compel him to mate? Is that consent?
And is it a decision when you can actually take, and these are smart birds, not like ducks, right? Ducks are prey animals, so they're kind of dumb. But you can take peregrine falcons, right? And you can sit a male and a female together, and the female rejects the male. She doesn't like him. She absolutely doesn't want anything to do with him. And then what do you do to change her mind? You stick him where she can see him and surround him with a bunch of female stuffed peregrine falcons who are all gazing adoringly at him, right? And she sits there and she thinks, oh, maybe he's got hidden depths or something, because there seems to be a lot of females looking at him in an adoring way. And then she's receptive. So if you can change a female peregrine falcon's mind by tricking her into thinking that a bunch of other females think the guy is hot, when in reality they're stuffed birds, right? What does that tell you about a decision-making process? Like that tells me that's just like an algorithm. It's very, very, very simple, very, very simple algorithm regarding social proof. Guppies have the same type of algorithm in regard to female social proof. that only works with, it's actually a little more complicated with guppies. It only works when younger females are observing older females who are receptive to males. Then the younger females will be like, oh yeah, I'll be receptive to him too, because obviously this older chick saw something in him that was worth it, so I'll have sex with him too. And if the older female rejects the male, the younger female who observes that will reject the male as well, right? So I mean, like, do guppies make decisions? And if not, why do they make this very, very similar decisions to peregrine falcons, who are, levels of or orders of magnitude more intelligent? Like,
Yep.
it's crazy.
All right. And that's part of the reason why to be honest, human sexuality, I know that you might take issue with this, Karen, but human sexuality is actually vastly different than animal sexuality.
I wouldn't say it's different than all animal sexuality. All
animal
sexualities are pretty different. Like they're.
Oh yeah, no, but I would say that in general, if you took animal sexuality as one overall thing, there are certain features that all animal species share and humans do not. All animal species go into estrus. Then
that's definitely cryptic ovulation.
Yeah, but they produce hormones that can be smelt from miles around. They go into an estrus at the same time. That their sexuality is compelled through hormonal compulsion.
Oh yeah,
so it's not. Cryptic ovulation is a very distinct difference that human beings have.
Oh yeah, and it's actually it's probably the reason why men don't kill each other all the time.
Real quick, I'm sorry. Okay. Xavier Gallagher says at HoneyBadgerRadio, because I've asked him to explain this thing that we're missing that only he can see. He says the natural widespread phenomenon of rape must have an underlying commonality. We cannot have a people are special approach. A feminist, by arguing rape is about power, changes the context.
You might
actually. I would agree.
I will disagree.
I would agree with him that there are biological bases for sexual coercion. Absolutely, 100% there are. What were the two guys named Palmer and Thornhill and Palmer wrote a book on it, and on how to detect patterns of behavior and thought that actually contribute to the likelihood that somebody would actually commit rape, a man in particular, because they were only looking at male on female rape. There's absolutely an argument that it's a reproductive strategy for sure. So essentially, like I don't have a problem with looking at biological bases for sexual coercion at all.
Okay, so what exactly did they find? That
I don't recall off the top of my head. All I know is they were harassed and threatened and had bomb threats. But no, they found that there were some biological bases to sexual coercion, that it could be a reproductive strategy for certain males that would work when other strategies were inaccessible to them. So it's better than nothing for the males who are going to get nothing, I guess, is really what
was the name again?
Thornhill and Palmer. It's called Natural History of Rape, Biological Bases of Sexual Coercion.
All right, I'll take a look at that. And I'm going to make another argument. The correlative factors for adult male rapists of women is having been sexually abused by a woman. So if there was a biological rationale for rape, you wouldn't see this strong correlation with abuse. So that the answer to that would be, yeah, I suppose if it can be it's a reproductive act in a way, but the problem is that it doesn't seem to correlate. It correlates most clearly with actually having been abused. I'm going to look at the research that Karen cites, but I wonder if because it is actually a reproductive act, that's not being conflated, or because it can produce offspring that isn't being conflated for there's a biological reason for it.
Oh, there's a few things that they say lend itself to the hypothesis that there is some biological basis for it, and one of them is the ceiling of violence. When it comes to if you have there is a ceiling of violence above which most male rapists will not escalate above that, and that seems to be the level of violence that would actually destroy the chances of the female carrying a child.
But
right?
What else is explained by that is this natural disincentive to do violence to women. Because this carries through not even to situations that are not reproductive. Criminals will preferentially choose to do violence to other men versus women, and will hold back their violence, even though it's a completely non-reproductive scenario. So this becomes sort of like an ad hoc sort of justification. I mean, if it's a behavior that men do even in non-reproductive circumstances, then saying, well, this is explained by this, it doesn't.
Yeah, but Alison, all circumstances are to some degree or another circumstances in which reproductive opportunities may arise.
Yeah, I know. That's what I mean. So it's really difficult to extract that. Well, no, actually it isn't, because we're talking about criminal things like assassination, bombing, choosing torture, people for torture. Criminals always preferentially choose men preferentially choose men in non-reproductive context.
Yeah, because they don't want to kill off a potential mate.
Well, it doesn't like you see how this doesn't. It doesn't, and the other thing is like even if you look at
what the problem is that everything is so intertwined. It's impossible to untangle it, right? Because our behavior, right? Our behavior. It's like wearing makeup to the office. You're not going to the office, right, in order to attract a mate, right? Maybe you're married already, you have a boyfriend, you just went on your honeymoon, right? You're really super in love with the guy, you wear makeup to the office, right, because you want to feel attractive. Well, that's because even in non-reproductive contexts, you want to be attractive to other people, even when you're not shopping for other offers. Right? Even if you're like super, super blissfully happy where you are, right? Most women will go out of their way to make themselves sexually attractive, right? That's not a reproductive context, but what they're doing is they're engaging in sexual signaling, right? So you can't untangle the sexual motivation from every other aspect of life. It's impossible. It permeates everything.
Okay, that's true, but it goes both ways. You can't tell if it's another factor or if it's because of rape. Do men not go past a certain level of violence because of the reproductive factors of rape, or because they just don't in general go past a certain level of violence with women?
I would say that they choose not to go past the general level of violence with women because all women are potential carriers of their seed.
Okay, fair enough, but but here's the additional problem. The best correlative factor for going on to become an abuser is having been abused, and also neglect, and specifically by an adult female.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
and
there's something like, are you going to argue that for ducks, these male ducks are being abused by their female teachers or something? It seems to be something, as different is going on.
Well, if there's so much duck rape going on that there was a co-evolution, right, of genitals that if in females to thwart the duck rape, right? If there's that, then I can't imagine that it is anything other than a reproductive strategy. Because I mean, like, honestly, if it wasn't resulting in lots of rape babies, then there would be no need for females to
and yet it isn't, but let's keep going, because maybe we can discuss this all in retrospective, because I think he makes in total 4 points in this entire thing.
Oh my God, 8.5 minutes and only 4 points. Okay.
What that means is that what that Tea Party Senate candidate Todd Akin from Missouri said about women have a way of shutting that whole thing down in reference to rape is actually true of ducks, but in a way that exposes something fundamentally new and interesting about evolutionary biology, which is that sexual autonomy matters to animals. Freedom of choice is not merely a political concept discovered by suffragettes and feminists in the 19th and 20th centuries, but is actually an evolved feature of the social and sexual lives of other species, especially.
Okay, this is not new. This is not new, and it's not news. Okay, like literally, I'm reading in a David Geary book. Okay, Male, Female: The Evolution of Human Sex Differences. Reading a situation where a male chimpanzee, okay, chimpanzees supposedly don't experience female choice, right? Female choice is not a thing amongst chimpanzees. Okay, so a male comes in and he ousts the dominant male, kicks him off his castle and takes over. And normally when that happens, all of the females in the harem are receptive to the new guy. And one of the females just didn't take a shine to him. And he tried to initiate copulation something like 140 times over the course of 24 hours. And all she had to do to thwart him was just turn her body away. That's he never got his. He never managed to convince her. Gorillas, right? You would think, okay, there's only one adult male in the group, right? And when a new male comes in and ousts the other male, right? All of the females just no, some of them leave. Some of them are like, well, fuck this guy, I don't like him. And they leave. And they're allowed to leave. Right? This idea that females don't exercise choice in terms of mating, even within tournament systems, right? This is absolutely ridiculous.
And the idea that they don't take away not men's, but male animals' choice is also ridiculous, as you can see with the Topi antelope, in which females who are less desirable will actually insert themselves between a more desirable female being mated by a desirable male. Yeah. So they will actually attempt to rape males, and it's possible, but that's something that is not examined at all in the literature, and certainly not by this guy. All right, let's get a bit more in.
Ducks. How does this work? Well, if the female mates with the male she prefers, that is, she gets the green head and the quack, quack, quack that she likes, and then her male offspring will share those traits and be sexually preferred by other female ducks who have co-evolved those same aesthetic preferences. But if she's forcibly fertilized, then her male offspring will either inherit a random trait or one that she's specifically rejected, which means that her offspring will be less attractive to other females.
So I was looking at the comments to this video, and somebody said that human females have less autonomy than ducks. And this was a feminist. I was like reading this, and I'm like, you've just given me a pain in all of my places.
Okay,
your comment has just given me a pain.
Even going through the history of arranged marriages and things like that, right? Often if a female, it was pretty common for a female to just object to the point where her parents were like, okay, let's just call this off.
Yeah, that happened in Rome too. And they were quite a bit less. But the thing with the attitude was more, first of all, when we're talking about arranged marriages, you have to have something that somebody wants before someone's going to arrange a marriage with you.
Yeah.
So 95% of human history, most women weren't in arranged marriages, or if they were in arranged marriages, it was a matchmaking situation that the boy was also in, or the
matchmaker thought that they would make a good
pair. They would make a good pair. And there's also when you talk to people in the societies where they do have arranged marriages, they say that that's what makes the marriage works. And if you look at the statistics, there are a lot of happy arranged marriages, apparently more than our own. But regardless, so if you go by outcome, that's something to consider.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying we should have arranged marriages because we
Yeah,
have
but
a
maybe-
fetish for
maybe-
autonomy in our society.
Maybe the adults in your life, when you're like 19, 20 years old, and you're taking, you're buying into the whole women's studies thing, and you're, like you think that the entire world sucks, and you're acting like David Hogg saying, old people don't even know how to use their iPhones. They don't know how to use democracy and shit like that. You think you know it all, right? Maybe you don't.
Yeah. And
Maybe
that could
your
be,
elders are wiser.
and so who knows, but for the most part, these kind of very young arranged marriages didn't happen outside of classes where people cared. You had something to bring to the relationship, or your family was powerful or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for the most part,
even then, arranged marriages, okay, it was arranged maybe when you were 6 or 9 or whatever, but most marriages, even amongst the upper class in at least in Europe, were I think the women were 19, average age was of first marriage was 19, average age of first marriage for men was 23 or something like that.
and peasants were even older, like 26.
Yeah,
for women.
yeah, and the number of children, the average number of children for women in that time was between 3 and 5 or something like that.
Okay, so it's not a situation that's quite as dire as he's making it out to be. And even in Rome, where marriage in the upper classes was very much about political positioning, and for the most part, I think women adopted an attitude of do duty by your family and by Rome itself. And it was probably also softened by the fact that in that particular society, sexual desire was supposedly went from the male to the female. So in other words, it's men who were the sexually desirable ones. But regardless, even in those circumstances, like for the most part in Roman society, when you get below the level of the political classes, they had dances where young people would meet and choose their own partners. And this is very common in when you're looking at the lower classes where they don't have anything political, there's no political clout being decided, and there's no monetary stuff being decided. So there's been a lot of consent. And the other thing is that where women don't have consent, usually men don't either. So it's really bizarre to start talking about the idea that human females only develop sexual autonomy with feminism. Well, first of all, our beliefs about sexual autonomy were quite different a millennia ago or 2 millennia ago. The idea that you would have sexual autonomy in defiance of your family's wishes was just unheard of. And that went for men and women.
Yeah, no, you can look at cases in India right now of, like in Delhi or whatever, where the one female cop that they interviewed said that more than half of the cases that come across her desk are cases arising from consensual sex. And frequently it is, a young couple, unmarried, they have consensual sex, she gets pregnant, he maybe promised to marry her, or maybe he didn't, but she now wants him to marry her because she's pregnant or something, and his parents will not give him permission. And so she brings a rape charge to coerce his parents to give permission for him to marry her.
Yeah, and that's sort of the intersection between our crazy laws and their more traditional society.
Well, and what's hilarious is, give it 10 years, feminists in India will say, just 10 years ago, women were forced to marry their rapists, because that's how the majority of these cases resolve, is through the marriage of the rapist and his rape victim. And that was essentially the way things were, back when we used rape as a term, often a sexual term, but taking something that you have no right to take is really what it was. So it was having sex with a woman against her parents' will, basically.
Yeah, and incidentally, the entire thing didn't exist for men. And the other thing is that this would be something that these tribes would consent to having a judgment over. If it was an actual stranger drag her down, rape her in an alley situation, that would just result in tribal warfare. They wouldn't,
or just a quick murder. Yeah.
Yeah, they wouldn't be like, let's take this issue to the judge and the police. No, that would be like, tribe A is now at war with tribe B and 17 men are going to die.
Yeah.
So and here's the thing. This illustrates that it's actually even difficult to understand what our ancestors were thinking, and they were human beings who wrote things down.
Yeah.
How do we know what ducks were thinking?
Yeah, no, and it's like, because I mean, even just the word rape, right? If in the Bible, right, if a man comes across a woman of virtue, unmarried, and rapes her, right, he must pay reparations to her father and marry her, and he can never divorce her, right? Now, that was not an option for the guy. That was, but I mean, like, there's no way that he could force her to marry him against her parents' will, for sure. But the word rape in that context didn't actually mean the forcing of sex on a woman against her will. It was actually much more to do with against her parents' wishes or whatever, right? Like doing something that you have no business doing, basically. Right. So the woman in that situation could have been not only completely willing, but the instigator of the sexual encounter could be actively pursuing it, and it would still be considered that. There was a different word for a man forcing a woman to have sex. I think it was called stuprum or something like that.
And we can actually see this in action in a more recent scenario, like 60 years ago. Brian, I think you're echoing again. A recent scenario is lynching in the Old South, or in the Jim Crow South. It was, and they didn't just do it to black men, they also did it to white men, although a fewer number, marginalized white men. But a lot of it was due to alleged sexual crimes against women of a higher class than the men who were accused. And one of the reasons why they said they had to lynch is because they did not trust the justice process. They didn't trust the judicial process. They didn't trust the police to actually enact justice. And that's the conflict between this kind of overall, maybe a bit more neutral idea of due process and justice. This idea of somebody coming in and deciding for what happened in this situation. That's the difference between that and tribalist ideas about rape. You can't tell me that white men in the South didn't care about their women being raped. They didn't want it to go to trial because they thought the trial system with a judge and due process would not get justice for their women. I'm almost certain that is the more likely to be the mentality if you look 3,000 years ago of tribal men with their women than this idea that somehow they didn't care that their women were being raped and it was only about property. No, they didn't want that. If that one of their women got raped, there's no way they're going to have it in some sort of judicial process because they don't think justice will be done that way. The only way justice will be done is if they get to go and hang someone and kill some of his brothers. Do you see what I'm saying?
There you go. And the only reason why a case would ever be heard in a court of law is probably because these are star-crossed lovers. They're Romeo, Juliet type things, or because the woman, the victim herself, does not want it prosecuted because she'd actually like to marry the guy, and that's why they ended up married.
Yes.
But I love him, Daddy.
Yeah, and the problem is that the historical record of these judgments and the law they're based on does not include the lynching or the situations where the woman's tribe was like, no, this woman has been violated by that tribe over there, and there's no way they're going to submit this to justice because there is no justice in that circumstance unless it is the justice of the sword and putting some.
This is the interesting thing too about like taking sort of learning history from stories, right? Not from the historical record and church registers and stuff like that, but from stories, right? Because I mean, the idea that you have some stories where there are these super young girls who were sold into marriage with these horrible old 80-year-old men who treat them very poorly and stuff like that, right? Well, what do we write stories about now? Do we write stories about like washing the dishes and just like normal everyday things that normal everyday people do. Do we watch TV shows where nothing out of the ordinary happens, where we're just like, going about our lives, going pee, oops, no toilet paper, gotta go to the store now, and think of something for dinner, and like we don't tell stories about the mundane. We tell stories about the exceptional. And so people have this idea of history based on stories of the exceptional rather than stories of the mundane. So they think that, for all of European history, women were married off at age 13 to much older men and blah, blah, blah. Well, no, those are stories because they're interesting, because they were exceptional. They were not ordinary circumstances, even in those times. So, yeah.
Let's do some more of this guy.
All right.
So anything the female duck can do to prevent forced fertilization through physical resistance or behavior will evolve, because she will be rewarded with more grandkids, right? So what this means is that aesthetic norms, the shared ideas about what is beautiful among ducks, gives female ducks the evolutionary leverage to advance their freedom of choice in the environment of persistent sexual coercion and sexual violence. Right?
That makes no sense.
Why
would males evolve this weird corkscrew penis if all they could do was like have greener heads?
Yeah, why make the effort? Why it just and to be honest, the green head is not actually a very good signal of vitality and vigor. The corkscrew penis and the raping, maybe. This is why I wonder if this is not just some extended courtship. Like,
it's a little weird.
She doesn't actually, like, how do they know that the male that she eventually mates with is not also the male who was attempting to mate with her while she wasn't receptive? And the only point of the whole corkscrew thing is to make sure that when she is receptive, that the penis goes exactly where it needs to go to fertilize her.
I don't even know. I mean, he did say that they coil in the opposite directions, right? So they are actually incompatible.
Yeah, the incompatibility selects for what? It selects for a mate that
is persistent.
Is persistent. and maybe it's the persistence that the test of fitness. So the real question here is the duck that eventually mates with her the same duck that remained persistent throughout her entire cycle? And again, if the difference between a consenting female duck is just a surge of basically hormones and a non-consenting duck, how can you really call that consent? Let's say we just inject women with overpowering amounts of oxytocin and then send them to a party and they get laid. But we do it on the sly. Is that consent? That is technically rape. Whoever delivered the drugs would be considered at least an accessory to rape. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You can't say that a female duck is consenting in the way that a woman consents. Because when a female duck is receptive, it's because her entire she's like surging with hormones to make her receptive. And that isn't a conscious choice on her part. And there is no comparison. There's nothing you can compare to with human beings. Yeah, we get horny, but we are not compelled in the same sort of we don't have the same kind of biological compulsion to mate. And if in the presence of such a biological compulsion, can you really even talk about consent? And again, this penis thing could be selecting for males who are persistent. In fact, it could be selecting for the male that sticks with it the longest.
Yeah.
Despite her protests.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Special. So Davies 1602 says we're not special animals. Well, we definitely are. We are some of the weirdest creatures on this planet. Our life cycle is bizarre, and our sexuality is equally bizarre. But continue, Brian.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say I should probably read these super chats off before we continue because there's a ton of built up and we didn't touch them. So I'm gonna read through them real quick. Okay.
Not really a ton. I guess this topic isn't
Well,
very interesting to people.
Not really a ton, but Jeremy Menning gives a $3 and says duck holding is all the new rage. It's science. Polaris 589 gives us $5 and says weapons grade penises. And then he gives us another 5 and says ban assault peckers. No one needs an 8-inch wang. Luga Wanshu gives us $2 and says I find having to look at what older women are holding. And then Sarathis gives us 1,000 huffs. I don't know what a huff is, but HUF. So thank you, Sarathis, assuming that's a lot of money. After Handmaiden's Tale, you absolutely...
It's about $5.
Yeah, probably. You absolutely must cover the 1984 Polish film Sex Mission. It is far more prophetic than The Handmaid's Tale or Idiocracy, especially the reveal. I think I've heard of that movie.
I've heard about that movie.
Yeah, I've heard about that movie. I've never seen it. I'll look into it. And then French Honey Badger gives us $5 and says, picks up headphones, hears Alison talk about Romans. Typical. So, yeah, I got through them all. Thanks. And I guess we can continue the video now. Okay.
All right.
You know, I used to be able to do a Donald Duck impression, and I cannot remember how I've shaped my mouth to make those noises to sound like that. I'm struggling with it while you guys are discussing all this. But anyway, I'm going to continue the video.
I think what you're doing is probably more fruitful than what we're doing.
Considering it's about ducks, I think it's a bit forced.
Yeah.
Get it?
Oh, God. Yeah.
This is really stunning. In fact, we know these ducks are so successful because in species where 40 or 50% of the copulations are forced, only 2 to 5% of the eggs in the nest are fathered by males who are not the social partner. What that means is that females have a 98% successful birth control device that is behaviorally deployable in the vaginal tract in response to sexual violence. Right?
Okay, but here's the other question. Who are the ducks doing the raping? Because if ducks pair bond and 98% of the offspring are fathered by the duck with the female, that means almost every single male duck has a partner who he's actually having ducklings with. And then he's also raping other female ducks, presumably not his partner. This is starting to break down in its logic.
It's I don't know. It's like a little bit weird because, you know, like
Why bother?
These ducks appear to have actually a higher rate of I guess paternity certainty than most other even monogamous species. You know, like you don't find that level of paternity certainty in marmosets or other New World monkeys that mate monogamously. So like this and you don't find it in other species of bird even. So very strange. 98%.
But 98% is
98%. 98% agreement between the socially monogamous pair and sexual monogamy, and well, I guess the result of sexual monogamy, which is offspring, right? 98% agreement there. That's almost unheard of in any species.
Yeah.
The whole thing is really strange.
It is really strange. And then why would the male duck evolve this elaborate corkscrew penis?
And why would he
2%?
evolve? Why would he evolve for sexual aggression at all? You know, wouldn't that have evolved out because, you know, the male ducks who were too busy raping to, like, you know, help to tend the nest with their socially monogamous partner and their own eggs? I mean, there's got to be something going on here other than
there's got to be for example, why would they evolve such a complicated procedure for something that's only 2% successful, whereas just having a nice green head is 98% successful, unless the corkscrew penis is part of the pair bonding process, which is what I'm getting at. Maybe it's selecting for the persistence of a particular male partner.
Or maybe it's selecting for the particular stimulation of the corkscrew penis that coils the opposite way to the corkscrew vagina. And maybe it just happens to be that this corkscrew vagina thwarts rape attempts. Maybe that's just coincidental. Maybe that's a spandrel.
Yeah.
Maybe it didn't adapt for that purpose, but for some other purpose.
Why would
right?
why would a male duck invest so much in something that's only going to give him an additional 2% chance and might actually make his 98% chance less, like his ducklings less likely to survive to adulthood themselves? Like it's starting to, I'm just really wondering if there's any science that's controlled for the possibility that this is the same duck.
Oh, there probably is. They probably tagged them or something. Yeah.
That the resistance is, or alternatively, that the that this is just some sort of, it's not even intending for reproductive success, but mismatches or confusion or something.
Yeah, who knows?
Because, like I said, why would a male duck have evolved a corkscrew penis, put so much investment in that for a 2% chance when all he needs is a brighter green head? And even that isn't, like, these ducks are all mated. Like all of the males are mated with the females. So who knows? Like, this just seems really bizarre.
Yeah. Well, and rape seems like it's a risky endeavor. You can get hurt doing it.
Yeah, because we're not dealing with, when you're dealing with a resisting female, you can get hurt. I mean, ducks don't necessarily have a lot of things that they can do to cause damage. They don't have claws or teeth, but they can cause damage.
They can bite, yeah, for sure. Dog! Stop.
All right, let's finish this off.
Right? That's like FDA approvable, right? And what that shows is the power of female choice to advance the sexual autonomy of individual females. One of the interesting things we learned from examining sexual conflict in ducks is that the genital arms race between males and females is not really a fair fight.
Pausing for the banana.
It's not really a fair fight.
It's not really a fair fight in what way, dude? Okay, go on.
In fact, the advances in male coercive capacity are really about control over female outcomes, right?
Well, it's about control. It's
what? No, you moron. It's not about control. Even if it was about control, it would not be about control of female outcomes. It would be about control of genetic propagation of the male. That's what it would be about. It's not, I'm going to rape this female duck to keep her down and control her outcomes. No. I mean, it's just about passing on genes. If that's what it is, right? Dog, oh my God. If that's what it's about passing on genes, right? And the control of female outcomes is just a necessary byproduct of that, because the male can't pass on genes without hijacking the female reproductive process. Oh my God. Just like, this is my dog. Just like if I decide I'm going to, I don't know, climb on some passed out guy at a party and have sex with him and intentionally get pregnant, or I'm going to lie about birth control, I'm taking control of his outcomes. But I'm not necessarily doing it out of a motivation to control his outcomes. I might be doing it because I just really want a kid. and the control that I have and exercise over his outcomes is secondary to that. It's not the primary motivation. It's not like I wanna turn that guy into a father. No, I just want to have his kid. OMG dog. Okay.
All right, let's just listen to some more.
They are about controlling, physically controlling fertilization. However, the countermeasures that females evolve are not actually about power or control. They merely reestablish the freedom of choice, if you will, the flat playing field in which individuals are free to choose who they like.
Oh, okay, that's what he was getting at. Yeah, well, what happens when women force their reproductive decisions on men, dude? What happens then?
That is garble speak. That isn't possible.
That sounds like something from another planet.
It really does, you know. Oh my God, dog! I'm gonna fucking kill you. I'm gonna throw. I'm just gonna throw something at her right now. Stop it.
My dog is so much more behaved right now. He's just sleeping on the floor next to me.
Oh my God, my dog is the most vocal dog on the planet.
So good.
So
Jojo,
Raymond
you are the
Duncan
man.
in the chat says duck sex is roughed on the female, broken bones and drowning. Well, that actually really speaks to why the hell do they do it? Like if all the male ducks are going to do is get pair bonded and have a 98% chance that their ducklings are theirs, why
Not a 98? Well, you know, yeah, 98% chance.
98% chance that all the ducklings in the nest that they're tending to are theirs. Why even bother with the raping that could potentially kill a female?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why even that would take away male ducks' reproductive opportunities entirely. It doesn't. I mean, if you look at it, it just doesn't.
It's weird.
It's weird. It seems like there's something that there's something not being accounted for in here. Let's finish this off because he finally gets to what I think might be a point, but it's more like being hit with a flat platter. Like if you think about somebody making a point with their ideas, this feels more like being clobbered with a flat platter rather than coming to a point. Okay.
Right? Now, this sexual autonomy is not actually about control over other people's or over other individuals' sexual outcomes. That's fascinating because this.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Because every time a woman says no, she's obviously controlling a male's sexual outcomes.
I actually left a comment.
Every time a female rejects a male, she is taking control over his sexual outcomes.
But you don't even have to go there. Look at feminists' track record in upholding this idea that women can separate consent to parenthood from consent to sex, but not saying that men should have the same right to do that, to be able to say, you know what, I consented to sex, but I didn't consent to parenthood. In fact, even allowing that men, or in situations where they didn't even consent to the sex, where they were raped or their sperm was stolen or from a literal sperm bank. I know people love to make fun of, the women who hijacked my sperm. Well, there has been a case where a woman actually stole the sperm from a sperm bank, but from
and there has been a case. There has been a case where she took sperm from oral sex and got child support, and there has been a case where there have been cases, including ones where women talked about how they took sperm from condoms. So, I mean, it's not common, but it happens. Exists. And lying about birth control.
Yeah, so all of these instances
just as bad.
All of these instances women do. In fact, lying about birth control is an incredibly common thing. Something like 15% of men have experienced that. And it's a form of abuse according to the Center of Disease Control. So even let's just restrict it, not even to situations where women have, and they should have the right to be able to say no, but situations in which women appropriate men's reproductive choice by lying about their birth control or raping the men.
Yeah.
or not allowing men to have a choice whether or not they want to become a father. Like all of this stuff is either ignored by feminist theory or upheld. Because there are feminist groups who have upheld laws that keep the discrimination against male victims of rape, of female rapists. And there are feminists who oppose this idea that men should also have the right to separate consent from sex, to consent to parenthood in every single circumstance, including rape. So there's huge evidence that feminists do indeed want to retain control over men's sexual choices, or give women control over men's sexual outcomes. And also, there's entire branches of feminism devoted to delegitimizing men's sexual choices when it comes to attractive women, when it comes to young women who are of age, when it comes to women who are not obese, when it comes to women who are not past menopause. Feminism has essentially
when it comes to women who have penises.
Feminism has made it essentially immoral for men to not have the right to choose. I mean, if feminists were ducks, they would be the male ducks.
Yeah, they would be the ones saying, I don't care whether the head is green or as green as you like or not. You should be. Every woman has the right to be loved.
Sexual access to you.
Every woman has the right to have a sex life. Every woman has the right to feel sexually validated. These are rights that I have heard. I have heard them described as rights by feminists when it comes to women who are unattractive in some way, that it is not okay for men to actually be choosy. And to only have sex with the women that they are themselves attracted to. If you say as a man that you wouldn't date a trans woman because she's trans, right? You're a bigot. Like, I'm sorry, but
this doesn't. It's when you say that feminists want to take away men's reproductive options, and that's a fantasy. Well, actually, what you're talking about is your fantasy about what men's rights activists are actually concerned about, because they're not concerned about women being able to say no. They're not concerned about that.
We're concerned about men being able to say no.
Yeah, we're being concerned about men being able to say no.
And not being shamed for saying no.
Yeah.
Or called bigots or racist or fat phobic or some other transphobic or whatever.
In jail.
Right?
Yeah, or going to jail, or being forced to parent when they only consented to sex, or being forced to parent when they didn't even consent to the sex. That's what we're concerned about.
And they're not even or not being allowed the opportunity to parent, but being forced into paying. So
let's do it.
Symmetry between male coercion and female resistance in duck sex has really fascinating parallels to patriarchy and feminism in cultures today. So, for example, patriarchy is historically, and even in a modern sense, about coercive control over female reproductive autonomy, whereas feminism...
Oh my God, no.
Let him finish.
Is really an ideology of freedom of choice, right? And that same asymmetry between male power and freedom of choice is elaborate and present today. And we can see this explicitly because patriarchy and men's rights and incel movements all articulate feminism as a countervailing force of control over male reproductive outcomes. But that's a fantasy. In fact...
No, it is not! You stupid man! Okay.
Big think. This is a smart channel, guys. It's smart because it says think in the title and the word big. That means it's smarter than us.
Where does women's choice end and men's rights begin, my friend? Does a woman have the right to shame a man for not finding her attractive? Does a woman have a right to rape a man and expect her to support the resultant child? Like, these are the questions that we're contending with.
Yeah.
I think most men's rights activists are perfectly fine with the idea that women have the right to control their own bodies. What they're saying is, do men have the right to control their bodies? And this is your fantasy of what you think we're about and what you think we talk about. And of course, this particular channel will have a great reach to be able to explain to everybody exactly what men's rights activists talk about. Although, to be honest, having listened to this twice now, I still don't know what the hell he is on about. All he says is duck sex, something, 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 patriarchy, feminism, incels, men's rights activists.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't even freaking... Anyway.
He's drawing an equivalency between us and the duck rapists, Alison.
He also kind of give male ducks, more autonomy, more agency than female ducks in setting this entire dichotomy up before he gets to this final, argument, which is female ducks have more agency than human women because they at least have the reverse corkscrew vagina, but male ducks still control them and dominate them by forcing them. Isn't that kind of what he's getting at?
Yeah, that is kind of what he's getting at.
Could you repeat that? Because I was reading a super chat.
All right.
Okay, repeat it.
All right. So what it seems like he's saying is that not only all the stuff about feminism and men's rights and the incel community, the incel movement, as these morons put it. Well, they always put it that way, even though it's obviously not a movement. What he's saying is that in the duck world, male ducks have more agency and more power than female ducks, because despite the fact that female ducks have a biological instrument that is used specifically to prevent male ducks from raping them, they still do it. And so therefore, women don't have they don't have special anti-penis vaginas, so they are more oppressed and have less autonomy than female ducks do. And this is what his ultimate point is, I think. Or at least one of them.
I just started being sort of creeped out by this guy because he's just... Okay. His eyes are constantly... they're bugged. You notice that? They're just like all white rimmed around the whole thing. It's like he's on some sort of stimulant, like amphetamines or something. And this makes me even more creeped out. That if this is indeed what he is trying to say, that women have less autonomy than a duck. So he's essentially reducing women down to having less personhood than an animal, than a bird.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know.
Does he rub himself off on that thought? Women, they're more helpless than ducks. They're more helpless than animals.
All I know is that, when it comes to narratives that really appeal to guys who are rapey or, otherwise engage in sexual misconduct or whatever, when it comes to narratives that appeal to those guys, feminism seems to really appeal to them. It really, really does. It seems to be something that...
Well, there's parts of the female that they no longer have to contend with.
Well, and
they no longer have to contend with the idea that a woman actually affects her environment. Like, essentially, that's what he said. He said that women have less power over the world and society than a duck has over duckness, a duck pond.
Well,
but that's something that he no longer has to contend with. Or at least psychologically, he can pretend it doesn't exist. There's an aspect of a woman's humanity that he now has rendered invisible to himself and anybody who listens to him. And that is her ability to affect men and society. I swear to God, I think that these guys have a specific phobia when it comes to recognizing women having any influence over men, over society, or even over their own lives. They specifically want to put women into a position of extreme health. Have you ever seen the movie Boxing Helena, I think it was, where the guy cuts off a woman's arms and legs? This is what he's just done. psychologically to women. And for whatever reason, he's seen as being a champion of women.
Okay, I'm just gonna say that movie sounds really disturbing.
It is really disturbing. It's about a surgeon who cuts off a woman's arms and legs, but he's not doing it physically, he's doing it mentally by
Yeah.
refusing to acknowledge the fact that women have influence over men's society and themselves in their own lives. He's cutting off, metaphorically, psychologically cutting off their arms and legs. And for whatever reason, he's compelled to do it, and he will never recognize any evidence to the contrary. And I've talked with people like this. No matter what, they do this. They do it, and they will not stop doing it. These guys do not stop doing it. You can say, hey, that actually is damaging to women. They'll continue to do it. Hey, that doesn't actually have factual support. They will continue to do it. It's because I'm pretty sure it's because they hate the sight of women's legs and arms. They just hate it. Something about it just triggers something in them.
Yeah.
I remember I went to the Canadian Association of Students, which is, they're awful now. And I remember going to a feminist panel. And of course, the little ladies were all huddled together, like little herd animals, tittering to themselves in their feminist panel. And I remember walking past this big walrus of a man who was just watching this with this smug grin on his face. And I looked at him and I'm like, this guy is dangerous. None of the women actually even gave him a second glance. But there was something about his smugness, about in response to what they were talking about, that made me think this guy is not. There is something about the way he approaches the world that makes him dangerous. And that was before that was actually what I think I still identified maybe as a feminist, at least as an egalitarian, not as a men's rights activist. So I wasn't completely aware of why I was feeling these emotions towards certain guys who love this kind of rhetoric that women are helpless. And now I know it's because they're promoting a social attitude that actually creates helplessness in women. That's what this is doing. What this guy is doing is creating learned helplessness in women. Women listen to him and they think that they don't have arms and legs. He gets them to be the way he wants them to be without arms and legs. You can train people to search for their own helplessness in any circumstance. And that's what he's doing with his talk about women not having the autonomy of a damn duck.
Yeah, I agree. It must be a really seductive narrative for a lot of men, particularly men who are not necessarily very attractive.
Yeah, it might be, in some ways, you could even call it a corkscrew penis that you're metaphorically fucking women with.
Well, I mean, like, honestly, it's like when you look at when you actually look at someone like Mike Pence, right, and say what you want about him, and his politics and stuff like that.
It's like Race Bannon from Johnny Quest. That's what that's what I say about him.
People might not like him, right, or they might not like his politics. But one thing that he does do is he's just like, I'm going to present a public image of being everything being above board, and I will not have dinner with a female colleague without my wife present. I just won't do it because I don't want there to be even the appearance of possible impropriety. I love my wife and I respect her too much to subject her to rumors that I might be having some kind of extramarital affair, right? And I definitely don't want to be in a position where I could be accused of any kind of misconduct. And so I'm going to conduct myself at all times in the most upright and rigid way possible when I have to deal with women, right? And you might think that that's really unfair to women, blah, 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 right? But what do we see? What have we seen so much lately since the Me Too thing has been these sort of feminist men being accused of sexual misconduct. Just the other day, Joss Whedon freaking tweeted something. Oh God, I forget what it was he tweeted, and the responses to it. It was about sexually predatory men or whatever, right? Sexual harassment and the whole bit, right? And it was in response to a article about Jordan Peterson. And it was a positive article about Jordan Peterson, and he was like, yeah, he supports incels, and he's like rapey and blah 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 blah, right? And all of the responses, all of the highly retweeted responses were like, yeah, because having sex with young actresses who are depending on you as a director and producer and writer for their careers, and cheating on your wife and all that's just so feminist, right? Because he has a history of that, right? And so many of these feminist men, right, have a history of all kinds of sexual shenanigans that, I mean, it's almost like they glom onto feminism either as fat material, right? Because, hey, hearing about rape all the time and hearing about sexual misconduct all the time, right? That really gets you going, gets the juices flowing for some of these guys, right? Or in order to offload blame. It wasn't me that did all of those things. It was the patriarchy. Or maybe they're doing it so that they actually have more opportunities to prey on women.
Well, here's
right?
another.
It's slimy. It's so gross.
And I can actually add to this because nothing at all says, so they're creating a world in which everything is rape in order to take advantage of women doesn't make sense. I'm going to tell you how it makes sense. Have you ever seen the scenario of an abuser to their abuse victim saying, nobody's ever going to love you the way I love you?
No one will ever love you. If you leave me, if you walk out that door, no one will ever want anything to do with you.
No one. There's only monsters. There's only monsters outside that door. No one will ever treat no one will ever treat you as well as I do.
Yeah.
Now we can see that. That's immediately recognized as abuse. We can see that and say, hey, that's abusive. That's manipulative. That's creating a situation where the abuser says the world is against their abuse victim. Therefore, they have to cling to the abuser as their safe harbor. That's abuse. When these guys say every man is a rapist but me, they're doing the same thing.
Yep.
Then they say the world is out to get you, women. It makes you, you should feel helpless in the face of the world because you don't even have the autonomy of a duck.
Yeah.
You need me. And the more that these guys say that, the more women need them. Because they are actually, and the funny thing is that they don't actually need them. What they need is to recognize their own power and start to change the way they think of circumstances so that when negative circumstances happen, they reach for their own ability to improve their lives. But that's not what these guys are teaching them. What they're teaching them is that the world is against them and they need them. And that's why that guy was grinning so smugly at all of these feminists, because those feminists, those little hens huddled together, clucking under the watchful gaze of the fox, they were teaching each other that they were helpless. And the more that those feminists teach each other that they're helpless and non-feminist men are the worst men, they're monsters, they're all out to get women, the more they need feminist men. And they may say, no, we don't need them, they don't need them, but they do. Because they've just rendered themselves helpless and they've just rendered men the most powerful creatures in their lives. How can you simultaneously render yourself helpless in your own life and not have to ultimately appeal to men at the end of the day? And of course, the men that they're appealing to is that smug walrus watching his little hen house of harem feminists.
Mm.
That's
Agreed.
What they get out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it really is. It really is kind of like that picture of Obama signing the Lilly Ledbetter Act, that so resembles the picture of the male sea lion basking in the adoration of his harem.
Yep. And that's what that guy was doing, because all of those feminist women were teaching each other how much they needed feminist men. Mm-hmm. And like I said, you can deny it as a feminist woman, you can deny this entire dynamic as much as you want. But the reality is, if you teach yourself to only search for your helplessness and you teach yourself to only search for men's power, You need men. You need men more than I do. You need men more
Yeah.
than Karen does. You
Oh,
need men
God,
more
yeah.
than Brian does. Like I just need men because I create a service that I think is of interest to a lot of men. It's also of interest to a lot of women for precisely what I'm saying right now, because there's a lot of women who are waking up to that kind of smug manipulation and are saying, you know what, I'm not interested. And they want the tools to deconstruct it in their own lives and to achieve a true sense of self-awareness and self-power. So, but I don't need men in the same way that feminists need men. I love them. I love how they are. I love what they present, what they bring to the world.
Yeah.
Now, I don't love all men, but
No.
when a guy is, I love masculinity, and I love the biological expression of masculinity. It's just something I appreciate. But need, I wouldn't say so.
Well, with me, I love masculinity. That's why I do so many things like, tomorrow I'm going to be nailing up fence boards. So essentially, like, I love those kinds of tasks. I love the kinds of tasks that are predominantly masculine tasks. I really, and because I enjoy those things, I feel like, that I love being self-determining. I love being somebody who can take care of herself. I love being the person who, if my partner died tomorrow, right, and didn't have any life insurance and all of that, I would be okay, right? Like, I fit, like, materially, physically, right? In terms of taking care of myself, I would be okay. I would be able to do it.
Let me qualify that. We all need each other, and we definitely need men, like, in that sense. But I don't need men in the way that feminists need men.
No.
Feminists need men to project everything negative in themselves onto. And they need men as a way of denying their own power over their lives. And you can say that that's not real feminism all you want, but all I've ever seen from feminism is reducing women down to victims and men down to the agents, the real agents of everything.
Yeah.
So when I say I don't need men, I don't need men in that way.
Yeah,
in that psychological way.
I think one of the ways you put it ages and ages ago was feminists see women as the substrate upon which men write their actions.
Yes.
And that, I think, really encapsulates it. It's like a beautiful, beautiful way of putting it. So, all right, let's carry on.
Yeah, well, let's finish it because I think we're done. We're done.
Are we done?
The sexual autonomy includes the freedom to be rejected, which is a lesson that we learn from duck sex.
What the fuck does that even mean?
The freedom to be rejected. Well, okay, so we all have the freedom to be rejected, but duck sex doesn't teach us that, because the females aren't learning the freedom of being rejected, are they?
This is what I don't understand. Like it ends with learning the freedom of being rejected. Does it mean women learn the freedom of being rejected, or
no,
men?
males? Okay, dog. Oh my God, Jesus. Okay, go fuck off.
Because men, we never feel free to be rejected. We all get angry and start raping people. And then run them over with trucks and go on shooting sprees and go our own way, which is probably the worst thing of all, is walking away completely. All these terrible misogynist things.
Incels don't experience the freedom of being rejected at all.
No, they don't know what that's like. That's not what incel even stands for. It stands for hate women and kill people.
Yeah.
But if you're interested, though, I'm still subscribed to Big Think because they supplied me with this interesting cancer. But they do get actual smart people on, like Michio Kaku and Jordan. Jordan Peterson started making some videos on Big Think. I don't know how long he's going to be doing that till they decide he's too evil for them, because they still get on guys like this. And I just, you know what it seems to me is that Big Think tries to get on people who have, they've been educated in certain disciplines. But the people they tend to attract most of all tend to be people who work in the humanities and social sciences. Although this guy, I guess he's supposed to know biology, but they asked him to try to They must have asked him to say, okay, what do you know about biology that's interesting, and how can you relate it to feminism, incels, men's rights activists, and rape culture? I know, duck penises. That's how I'm going to do it. Now I just have to figure out how to get from point A, something I know about, duck dicks, to point B, feminism.
Patriarchy.
And as you know, that's all that feminism does these days. They can take anything, and they write papers about it. This is not satire. Any subject whatsoever, and they write papers on how it's feminist or how it needs to be more feminist. You can come up with anything. I think the study
of glaciers.
Yeah, glaciers. Oh, they've done it on lots of I think when we sent the robot to Mars, and it was like driving around taking pictures or whatever, I'm sure there's a feminist paper out there about that, and how that is either feminist or patriarchal. It's one or the other all the time. So I got some super chats. Should I get through the super chats?
Yes.
Frenchinator2 gives us $2 and says, ducks, is this about rape? Yes, it is, as always. Abstract Concrete gives us 25 plens, PLN, and says, hey, HBR Live, here, have some monies into the hat. Now dance. I was dancing, but you guys couldn't see. The Great Indoors 1979 gives us 10 euros and says, Karen's Doge sings a song. The audio is gone. Max Darrett has moved on. Hannah does a pun. The sausage gets too long. Allison's back is not too strong. She just wants to get her done. HBR is bigly. It's bigly. It's great. I'm not in this poem anywhere, and it hurts me. Max Worthy gives us $10 and says, Big Think videos are nothing but religious sermons. Turn off the volume and watch the expressions on body language. They are received wisdom to lesser beings. I think that, when you get like the social science people and some of the philosophers on, that's what you get. But Southern Celtic Water gives us $1 and says nothing, actually. So I look forward to, maybe you have something that you wanted to say. I don't know. Maybe $1 isn't enough to write a comment. I noticed that most people, the minimum they do is $2. So that's all. That's it for the super chats, Allison.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for being our audience.
Yes.
I appreciate you. And like I said, when I said I don't need men, I meant in the way that feminists do, this weird sort of psychological codependence.
It is really very. Oh my God, dog!
Dog has made commentary.
Oh, dog just wanted to share some opinions on ducks too.
Dog.
Did we already talk about how the dog penis is superior? And also, what does duck penis do to duck vagina? Does it destroy it after it's forced its way in? Okay.
No, it's sort of.
Does it reshape it?
No, it doesn't do anything really.
Okay.
It seems like this is a completely superfluous evolution, considering that all the male ducks are reproducing anyway. It seems more like this might just be some kind of weird spandrel of something else.
Could be.
Or alternatively, it's helping female ducks select for the most persistent males. And then
in case anybody was wondering though about dog penises and stuff, I think my dog needs a dog penis.
Yeah, that's probably her problem.
If anybody is interested in breeding, if they have an unfixed male dog in the area and they're interested in breeding their dog, I think I actually have my boyfriend almost worn down to the potential of breeding this dog, because this is her second hysterical pregnancy. She's lactating, and obviously she really wants to have puppies.
Okay, you just used HBR as like a lonely hearts for your dog.
Yes. Well, I mean, like she's got problems. She's got serious problems. She's lactating. She's not pregnant.
Yeah, but that's not something that we need to worry about here.
Yeah, we do. So if anybody listening knows anybody in the Edmonton area with an unfixed dog of around between 30 and 50 pounds size, who is
Why would you want puppies? They're a pain in the ass.
no, because you can sell them for like freaking tons of money
Oh
now.
my god!
Because
Now we're a puppy mill.
no, you know why? Well, we would keep one because I think she could use the companionship. But the issue is that like puppies are so hard to get from the Humane Society. It's probably pretty easy in buttfuck Saskatchewan where you are, because nobody fixes their dogs and there's puppies all over the place, right?
I feel ashamed of that about this. And somebody just sent through Swimming Hole Darkwing said money badgers. I'm like, I can't disagree with this at the moment because apparently we're starting up a puppy mill. All right, let's end this before I get more despondent.
I'm
Okay.
only doing it for my dog's psychological well-being.
One last
Oh
super
yeah,
chat.
that's the way it starts.
One last super chat. The Great Indoors 1979 gives us 5 more euros and says, "I'm sorry, Brian. Here's some more money. Now do some Jewish fap sounds." So, here we go.
What the hell? And he said Jewish fat sounds, not fap sounds.
Yeah, but he corrected his spelling right afterwards, so it was fap. Like the hand wringing. You gotta do the hand
Swimming Hole
wringing.
Darkwing says, I don't want to call you that. So why are you calling us that?
We're joking. Remember? I thought we were gonna like take ownership of that word. Like, yes. That's what we're about. Rub your hands
It's our
together and
nigger.
prove it. Yeah. There we go.
It's our nigger.
There you go. All right.
Okay, all
Give
right,
us
all
the
right.
shekels.
Oh, yeah.
Give us the shekels. Oh wait, actually, if you do want to give us the shekels and enjoy more content, www.patreon.com. We are now going out to the after show, which is another big big video on sexual harassment and friends. Okay, take it away, Brian, because I'm tired of listening to Karen's dog.
My dog eating the
And the
Doritos
idea.
bag. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
that's a really disturbing sound.
We're getting out of here then. I'll see you guys in the after show. Yeah. Good night, everybody. Have fun. Tell us what you think in the comments. Hit the like button. God damn it. All right. Love you.